Check Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, standing as always in the nerve center of the Czech News World headquarters here in Victoria, ready to help walk you through the week that was in BC politics. A lot to get to this week, including the Premier's trip to Ottawa, the politics around addictions treatment, and a look ahead to the throne speech from Premier David Eby. To do that, let us bring in the pod squad. Jeff Ferrier, Allie Blades are here this week. Jillian's enjoying a couple weeks of holidays. Lucky for her, but well-deserved. Jeff, I have to say that train station painting behind you is looking particularly resplendent this week.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that, Rob. And viewers at home and listeners on the podcast, you might be shocked to learn that there's a movement afoot in my office, H&K Strategies headquarters. Folks want to throw this painting in the garbage. They want to get rid of it. And I'm highly offended by this. And so I'm asking the viewers who see this and the listeners, please conjure up a colorful picture of a iconic Vancouver train station in your minds. I want your support. If you could text your support for us keeping this painting to @CzechPolitics on Twitter, that would make a big difference for me. So thank you, viewers at home and on the podcast.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Everyone's just going to tweet that they want that naked picture of Kramer, you know, when he's lounging just up there behind you. That's what's going to happen.
Costanza.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, anyways, it'll look good. It'll look good behind you. But all right.
Yeah, folks have alternative things they want behind me. Same thing.
Yeah.
Let Czech politics know.
You're asking for it. But okay, speaking of asking for it, Premier David Eby asking for some help from Ottawa, traveling there this week for his first bilateral sit-down meeting with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, on the docket. Healthcare, crime, bail reform, climate change, housing, affordability, just, pretty much all the big topics of our time. BC wants more money from Ottawa on those files, some legal reforms on prolific offenders. It came away with nothing concrete that I can see, but maybe that wasn't even the point in the trip. Jeff, to you first. Did this accomplish anything? Was it even supposed to? How do we view a trip like this?
We view a trip like this as the Premier and key cabinet ministers going to Ottawa to fight for BC's fair share in the upcoming federal budget. Did it accomplish anything? We will see in the upcoming federal budget and in the talks around a federal health deal. But we'll have to wait and see. Short answer. Important to do, but results up in the air.
The Premier is scheduled to go back on February the 7th for the summit with the Prime Minister and the other premiers on healthcare, Allie. And then I think he's got a Council of Federation meeting with premiers as well. So he's sort of back and forth to Ottawa. He wanted to get in there first to see the Prime Minister. Is there any value to that, or to sitting down with the Prime Minister before a big meeting of all the other premiers?
Well, certainly meeting with him was also the first time meeting with him in an official way as Premier as well, right? So it's a bit of an introductory meeting, which I think was completely worth it. My only criticism about this whole thing is that we really haven't heard too much about it. So even if there are no announcements from these various conversations, and even if there's still nothing next week, this is an opportunity for the Premier to show British Columbians, look, I'm out here in Ottawa, to Jeff's point, we're fighting for us, we're fighting for you, the communities, and we haven't heard anything. So even just that preamble of, these are the points that we're fighting for, this is what I'm going to bring up with the Prime Minister, that would have been great, but it was a missed opportunity this week.
Yeah, it is, all premiers love fighting with Ottawa. It's great, easy, cheap political heat. You just cast Ottawa as the villain. You go out and chop it a bunch of times. We need more money. They're not here. They're not listening to us. Eby didn't really do that. He kept it, I guess maybe it's their first meeting. He wanted to keep it more casual. There's a lot of money at stake here. If BC can get this healthcare deal with the other provinces, that adds $4 billion to the $20+ billion the province spends annually on healthcare, the single most expensive item in the budget so far. So some high stakes here if the province comes through. But we'll watch that because there are so many other meetings coming up. Let us jump into our next topic, and it's a much bigger one. It is, we'll start with BC's coroner releasing the latest overdose death statistics this week. It revealed that almost 2,300 people lost their lives to toxic drugs in 2022, just shy of a horrible record for the province, which was the previous year in 2021. There is an average of 6 overdose deaths a day in BC. 11,000 people have died in the 7 years since this was a public health emergency. The deaths due to contaminated drugs are now the leading cause of unnatural deaths in BC, more than car crashes or murders. Second overall only to cancer. So staggering numbers. There are political kind of considerations in this that the parties are looking at, but at the same time, there are movements like decriminalization and the first day of that becoming a 3-year pilot project in BC this week as well, where we talk about this before. It is an incredibly frustrating file. Why can't government get a handle on this? Why are we watching yet another announcement of record overdose deaths? Allie, what do you think?
Well, no one government is going to be able to get a handle on this, and that's my honest opinion. I think this is one of those things where we've seen government work together before, and we need a government that is going to call for that support across the aisle and across jurisdictions as well. So the decriminalization aspect that took effect in this country, and at the first jurisdiction in this country, and let's also be reminded that it's a temporary thing as well, right? So we're going to try it out. We're going to check the data, and if it works, fantastic, because if it works, that means less people are dying, and that's really what we're aiming for here, right? But it's not one government that's going to be able to solve this. And then we also can't politicize it in a way that one government, that if we change government down the road, that progress will stop. And so this is about compassion, not politics. So we're seeing opinions from across the aisle. They're all valid and they could all work. Because right now, truly, aren't we just trying everything to make sure that more people aren't dying?
Mm-hmm. We did have an all-party committee study this thing and produce a report that hasn't fully been enacted, but had all parties, behind various ideas. I don't know, Jeff. We've talked about this before, again and again. These numbers are just awful. Why are we stuck here, do you think?
Well, because it's an enormously complex issue with no easy solutions. If there were a quick fix to this, this would have been dealt with by this government and the government before it. And that it hasn't been tells us that it's enormously complex. And it's complex because you did some digging. I did some digging, and 950,000 British Columbians received treatment from the Ministry of Health for mental health and addiction services in 2021. 110,000 of those with moderate to severe conditions that had to be mandatorily reported. So the scale and scope of the hurt and trauma among people in British Columbia is huge. And it's not easy to get a handle on such an enormous problem. And the government's spending $1.8 billion on it now on a whole spectrum of approaches. And it's not enough. And Allie's right. This is one of those issues that's not political. It's about people. And we need to be vigilant because the problem is huge. And we need to be open to good ideas from wherever they come because we need to do better.
But, one of the questions that the new mental health minister, Jennifer Whiteside, got asked this week is, are we sure we're even on the right track? Because the numbers keep getting worse. And, the government points to a slight change in 2019 before COVID, but it was still going up. It was just going up, slightly fewer deaths. But is there a way, do we ever stop and just wonder if we are on the right track on this? And one of the ways that question manifested this week was on treatment and questions to the government about why don't we do better on treatment? Why don't we know simple things like, is there a wait list? How big is the wait list? Who's using the beds? Are the beds empty? Who's helped by the beds? Where are the beds? Like, it's an amazing 7 years in that we don't know that information, that 2 successive governments haven't crafted a treatment system here that has any cohesive structure and works in any way. I just go around again. Like, are we sure we're on the right track on this, or is it just about more, or are we? I don't know. I wonder about that question.
I think it's valid criticism to say that the province, which is unable to say what a wait list is for a treatment bed, should have better data and information. That's information we need to make good policy decisions. And they need to fix that. And they need to fix it fast. We got 3,280 beds, I think. And we need to make sure that that's enough. I think the other thing that's happening in addition to, the other thing that's happening is that drugs are becoming more toxic. So in addition to, the sense of the system's not responding as well as it should, there's also the fact that the drugs that have been coming into British Columbia, and this happened especially during COVID, are becoming more dangerous. And so, the confluence of those two things are combining to make the situation that we have today.
It's absolutely ridiculous that we don't have any stats on this whatsoever. But I also find it interesting, again, in my criticism of that David Eby's NDP government really didn't put out any communications this week. We've heard from the federal government that data is key in their funding across the country for this batch of funding, right? So wouldn't this fall completely in line with that data request? So if the federal government is going to be the one to decriminalize it, then shouldn't they be the ones to also then offer BC that support in breaking the barriers for tracking that data? Because it's a massive investment, right? So we won't know after this temporary trial, did it work unless we have that data? And I don't want it to be so much of a focus on data because we want those results to save people's lives, but it certainly does matter.
Yeah, and I think that's the topic of discussion that's happening on the health talks. It's not going to be one big health deal that applies to all the provinces. There's going to be a commitment by the federal government and then individual tailored deals, it sounds like, for each of the provinces. And one of the things that Premier Eby did say going into meetings with Ottawa is that healthcare is a focus and mental health care is a focus. And I absolutely believe that part of the discussions are on this issue and on the data requirements so that we can get the resources here that we need to be able to put more money and more resources and done in a smart, measurable way so that we get the results that we want, which is, as Allie said, fewer people dying from toxic drugs in our communities. Mm-hmm.
One of the major proposals this week came from Liberal leader Kevin Falcon, his first sort of big policy plank, a $1 billion plan to boost addictions treatment, make it free, eliminate wait lists that we've been talking about, create regional recovery centers where people can stay for up to a year, triple a wellness program at Riverview and expand that across the province. He's tiptoeing into involuntary care as well, which is something we've discussed and the NDP has discussed and is a very contentious issue. A big policy swing. Jeff, let's go back to you on this. What do we make of this very detailed, costed, dense, and I would argue, a well thought out policy platform here from the Liberals? What do we make of it?
So I think that Kevin Falcon's proposal here was a good day for Kevin Falcon. And not because it gives him some kind of a moral high ground. He's done things in the past when he was in government and said things that would give some people cause for concern whether or not they feel they should trust him. But I think on substance, let's take all that stuff out of the equation from the past, and you look at it on substance. And I think it was the first time that Kevin Falcon has brought forward an adult proposal, made an adult decision as leader of the opposition, making an adult decision to tackle a really significant challenge. And that's what people expect from their opposition leader. And so I was glad to see him bring forward some good, thoughtful ideas built in consultation with community on a really important issue. And so kudos to him. More of this, please. There are details about the announcement that I've got questions about, but on the whole, more of this and less of the ambulance chasing and air shovels, please.
Air shovels. Okay. Allie, what did you think?
I thought this was leadership at its finest. There were a few observations about this that I think are key. One, on a communications side, this was the week to put it out. This was the week that decriminalization was in the news, so people were paying attention to it. Advocates were paying attention to the topic. The entire country was paying attention to this topic. So they rolled it out in a precise way that just hit so many people. Everyone I know was talking about it. Granted, everyone I know are political nerds, so there's that. But the rollout was great. It was detailed. And this is something that we don't necessarily see from opposition quite often. And on a political communication side of things, there's always the argument, well, I don't want to put too much forward because I don't want to reveal too much about an upcoming platform idea. And going back to what I was saying earlier about not politicizing this issue, this was leadership in not politicizing an issue that should never be politicized. And so if he's putting forward and his team are putting forward these ideas, this is the opportunity for David Eby's NDP government to take pieces of that into consideration as well. So, because both sides can argue whose fault is this? And I saw a little bit about that this week. One side is investing way too much in harm reduction and are we just throwing money at it? And the other side was criticizing inaction of the BC Liberal government for so many years. Let's wipe the slate clean on that and just take the good ideas from this side and that side and from the Greens and from other jurisdictions. And I think that was the start of this. Without overtly asking, let's work together, this also had undertones of we can all come to the table and talk about this and provide some solutions.
Can we do that, Jeff? Does it work? Because I do notice, as Allie said, there is some political positioning shaping up here. And we do have the NDP on the safe supply decriminalization emphasis. We have the Liberals trying to stake out ground on treatment. And both sides publicly profess their support for all of the things, but they're emphasizing certain parts of it. And I'm wondering if that's because they sense any type of, public sentiment within their base or within what they think voters are looking for on the way that this file is progressing or not progressing or getting worse. Is there a hardening of that public sentiment for people to just say enough? Let's start doing more. Or what do you make of the positioning, or is there any, and should there be any?
Well, I'm not an expert on addiction, but I listened to the experts at the BC Centre on substance abuse, and they said that a working response to mental health and addiction requires both treatment and decriminalization and safe supply. So, if you're a parent with a kid on the street, you want to get them in treatment so that they're well. But if they're not getting into treatment for whatever reason, you sure as heck want to make sure that they don't have poison going into their veins that's going to kill them and keep them from going into treatment. I think there are political reasons why parties emphasize different parts of the equation on treatment. That is something that appeals, I think, to the more conservative side of the spectrum. I think harm reduction and decriminalization is a very progressive thing. The reality is we need both, right? And the government should absolutely look to this plan put forward by Kevin Falcon. Kevin Falcon says he's going to put it in place during the first 90 days. First 90 days of what? I don't know. Maybe the Liberals want a spring election. I've heard rumors of that.
There you go. But the politics
this is something
there.
A little politics. But look, Allie's right. Government should be looking at the suggestions and pulling out the good stuff and moving forward. It doesn't matter where the good ideas come from. You take them and you put them into action because that's what people want and what's going to give us the best results.
Allie, Kevin Falcon made an interesting comment as well, where he said not everyone in his party is going to support necessarily this position. He's taking a political calculation here that And he admitted it. There'll be some people in his party who say, why are you doing this? They may be on that further right spectrum that they don't believe in decriminalization or safe supply, which he's publicly supporting. And they don't believe really so much in spending this money on this in this way. Is there any risk within his party on that? Or it seemed like he was just making a decisive decision to say, you know what, this is what we need to do. I don't care about that part of it. But is there anything to worry about there?
I don't think there's anything to worry about. We choose leaders that will lead. And this is exactly what Kevin did. He decided that, he put forward a substantial figure. I saw $1.5 billion and that of investment to make this happen. That number would scare anyone on the center right. But this is the leadership that we've been asking for as British Columbians, because it can't matter anymore on healthcare specifically how much we spend to save people's lives. You can't put a number on that. And the leadership here is also, this is where you come back to the BC Liberal model though. We're going to invest all of this money. We're also going to make sure that the economy is doing well so that we can continue to afford it. But then as I was reading this announcement, I was also thinking about, well, there's additional investments that we have to make as well. If we want to make sure that there are enough beds and treatment for people who want it when they want it, then we also have to make sure that there are doctors, counselors, nurses, everyone that goes into the treatment of that person. And so I think for him, it's the leadership to ensure that all of those pieces come together so that it doesn't crumble apart once we get to that execution. It's the foresight of that plan. It's a substantial number, but I don't think it's going to hurt him at all.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching here. We will be back next week with all the latest on Political Capital.